cheated on my boyfriend, Chapter 1, The Restless Beginning. I was 21, a junior in college, and still feeling the way most people my age do. Restless, unsure, wanting to taste life at its fullest. My friends liked to tease me about how my mind changed as rapidly as the weather in spring, sunny one moment, stormy the next. But that's how I felt inside, like I was constantly searching for something, anything, that would settle the jitters in my heart. Then I met Aaron. He was 22, tall, with messy curls and a casual slouch that belied his intelligence. We took a sociology class together, though we only ever really spoke when we ended up in the same discussion group. He was the sort of person who'd deliver ideas in a quiet, thoughtful voice, and then crack a joke that made everyone laugh. I had friends who pointed him out in class. "He's interesting, talk to him." But I never gave it much thought until we were partnered for a short group assignment. Working on that project, something in me shifted. There was a softness about him, a hint of kindness that made me think, maybe I should say yes if he ever asks me out. A few times, we'd linger in the library after finishing our group discussion, sharing scraps of personal details, how I was majoring in marketing but still uncertain about my future, how he was in his final year of an engineering program. His eyes had a spark when he talked about mechanical designs. Maybe a hobby, maybe a passion for machines. We discovered small coincidences, like how we both loved indie rock and had a big sweet tooth. One day, as we parted ways, he mustered the courage to ask if I wanted to grab coffee. I said sure. Suddenly, that coffee turned into a couple of official dates. Dinner at a taco place, a night out at a campus comedy event. It all blurred into a small wave of excitement, me trying not to overanalyze, him seeming gentle and sweet. It wasn't exactly fireworks, but it felt like something promising. In a haze of pep talks from my friends, "He's super nice. He's adorable. Give him a chance." I decided to see where it led. We soon labelled each other boyfriend and girlfriend. A mere month and a half might sound fleeting, but I guess it can sometimes be enough time to gauge a relationship's potential. For me, it was enough time to feel a swirl of confusion about what I wanted, because deep down something felt off. Aaron was nice, sure, but my heart never soared around him. I might have expected more chemistry, more easy banter, but I was often left forcing conversation or ignoring the discomfort I felt when we tried to be intimate. My mind waged a daily battle. He's sweet. Don't be shallow. Try harder. But the nagging sense of incompatibility grew. I was at a stage where I craved experiences, maybe even a bit of carefree fun, while Aaron seemed locked into a path of seriousness. Also, I told myself, yet I felt guilty about having doubts. Like I was being disloyal if I considered pulling away. "You can't just keep running," I scolded myself. "Learn to stand still. Maybe you'll grow to love him in time." It didn't help that Aaron started making sexual advances that unsettled me. Not in a malicious way. More like he was ready for a deeper intimacy that I wasn't comfortable with. And physically, it sometimes hurt. I'd never had that issue before, so maybe the lack of natural chemistry was to blame. The more he tried to push us forward physically, the more I flinched. I found myself forcing smiles, hoping it would get better. But it didn't. Then there was the other side of him, the side I saw once or twice when he was drunk. He got weird, overly loud, messing with neighbours, once literally opening the car door while we were still moving. My fear spiked, and I realized how reckless he could be under the influence. That wasn't a deal breaker on its own. Plenty of people do silly things drunk, but it clashed with the nice, serious guy persona he showed me. There was also an ugly rumour a sexual assault allegation had been made against him at his college. The official stance was that it was some complicated situation that didn't lead to charges. He saw it was just a misunderstanding, that the college administration had forced him through a hearing but found insufficient evidence. Part of me wanted to believe him, but a small alarm bell rang. What if it's true? And so, a month and a half in, I was teetering on the edge. I kept telling myself we weren't meant to be. That's not to say I pinned all blame on him. He wasn't monstrous, and I was just as culpable for staying in a half-hearted relationship. But my indecision soared, and I let the days pass, smiling in front of him while swirling with worry inside. Chapter 2. The night at the club, I was already feeling restless that entire week. Assignments piling up, pressure from my part-time job, confusion about Aaron swirling in my head. A close girlfriend, Marley, texted me about going out to a popular club that Friday. "We need to let loose," she said. "All of us are stressed, let's dance it off." A part of me hesitated. I wasn't big on clubs. Noise, crowds, sweaty bodies. I usually avoided them, but the pull of escaping my thoughts felt too strong to ignore. "Sure," I wrote back, surprising myself. Maybe it could clear my mind, or at least let me blow off steam with friends. That Friday evening, I got ready in a mild daze, rummaging through my closet for an outfit that wasn't too fancy but made me feel confident. I picked a fitted black top, short skirt, and boots. Marley gave me a thumbs up when she swung by my dorm. "You look hot," she teased. "Forget your troubles tonight, okay?" I nodded, though a knot of worry lingered in my gut. Aaron had asked if I wanted to hang out that night, but I told him I had a girls' night. He seemed a bit disappointed, but I needed this break. "We can talk tomorrow," I told myself. Maybe I'd find the courage to end it. The club was downtown, pulsing with neon lights. A throng of people lined up at the door, chatter thick in the air. Inside, the bass from the music pounded like a second heartbeat. My friends and I grabbed cheap cocktails from the bar, then found a spot on the dance floor. For the first time in weeks, I tried to immerse myself in the moment. Feel the rhythm, let my limbs move to the beat, let my mind go blank. It worked for a while. I lost track of time, swirling in the crowd, my hair sticking to my neck from the heat. Laughter bubbled up whenever Marley twirled me or we shouted the lyrics to a popular track. This was what I had missed. Carefree energy, unburdened by the complexities of relationships. At some point, we took a break, leaning against the bar to catch our breath. That's when I noticed a guy next to me. He had a broad smile, a playful glint in his eye, and we accidentally locked gazes. Usually, I'd just turn away politely, but I found myself smiling back. Maybe it was the atmosphere, or maybe the tension in me sought an outlet. He introduced himself as Rowan. He was from a neighbouring college, out with a group of buddies. We exchanged a few words. Harmless stuff about the music, the crowd. I felt Marley nudging my arm, giving me a wide-eyed grin. She probably thought it was a flirtation. "You have a boyfriend?" A voice inside me cautioned. But as the music throbbed, that caution took a back seat to the adrenaline pumping through my veins. Rowan asked if I wanted to dance. My heart pounded. "It's just a dance," I reasoned. So I nodded. The dance floor was packed, but we found a small pocket of space. At first it was casual dancing, just a fun bounce and swirl. Then the crowd pressed closer. The music soared. Our conversation turned sporadic, overshadowed by the beat. I became acutely aware of how he moved near me. Our arms occasionally brushing, him leaning in to say something that got lost in the noise. Time blurred. My inhibitions wavered, courtesy of sweaty excitement and a second cocktail. Then it happened. A heavier bass track started, the lights flickered strobe-like, and in a rush of heady delirium, we found ourselves locked in a short but undeniable kiss. The moment our lips touched, an alarm blared in my mind. "You have a boyfriend." It was too late. The kiss ended as quickly as it started, but its impact felt shattering. My entire body went cold with shock. I pulled away instantly, stammering an apology to Rowan, confusion flooding my chest. I muttered something about needing air, dashed off the dance floor, leaving Marley behind. She stared after me in confusion, but I couldn't linger to explain. In the dimly lit hallway near the restrooms, I sank against a wall, heart pounding in guilt. My mind reeled. I just cheated on Aaron. We might have been on shaky ground, but we hadn't ended things. I was still in a relationship. The weight of betrayal hit me like a punch. The tiny flicker of attraction I had felt only moments before was replaced by a sickening swirl of shame. I rummaged in my purse for my phone, hands trembling. I had to talk to him. This was catastrophic. The moral code I believed in was violated by my own actions. No matter how much I was considering ending the relationship, I hadn't officially done it. So I typed out a confession with shaky fingers, then decided it was too impersonal. I pressed call instead. He didn't answer. Of course he's not awake at 1:00 a.m. Or maybe he's out partying too. I shot him a text. We need to talk. It's urgent. Then I resolved to physically leave the club before I made an even bigger mistake. My thoughts were swirling with how I would tell him, how I would phrase it. I might have disliked certain aspects of him or felt we were incompatible, but he didn't deserve to be blindsided by infidelity. Chapter 3. The immediate confession. I left the club without even telling Marley properly. She texted me a question mark. I replied that I felt sick and had to go. Outside, the cool night air slapped me with clarity. My cheeks burned with shame, my chest tight. I started walking quickly down the street, not quite sure where I was heading. Maybe back to my dorm. I needed to be alone, gather my thoughts, maybe send a full text to Aaron if he wouldn't pick up. I felt tears threatening. What have I done? Over a month of swirling doubts about the relationship, and now I'd created a situation 1,000 times more complicated. I despised the kind of heartbreak I was about to cause him, and ironically, heartbreak I'd caused myself because I had never once imagined I'd be a cheater. I always thought if I was unhappy, I'd break up first. But here I was, crossing a line I never intended to cross. I tried calling again, and this time, unbelievably, he picked up. His voice was thick with either fatigue or annoyance. "Hello?" "Aaron?" I said, voice trembling. There's something I have to tell you. I messed up, but I just kissed someone else. I'm so sorry." The words came out in a rush, tears pooling in my eyes, though I tried not to cry into the phone. He went silent for a few seconds, long enough that I wondered if he hung up. When he finally spoke, his voice was cold. "What do you mean? You kissed someone else?" I swallowed. I was at the club. I danced with a guy. It was stupid and impulsive, and we kissed just for a moment. It meant nothing. I realized as soon as it happened how wrong it was. I wanted to tell you right away. A silence again, then a seething hiss. "Are you messing with me?" "I wish I was," I said softly. "I'm so sorry. I know we were maybe not in the best place, but that doesn't justify it. I messed up. I think we need to break up. I can't keep doing this. It's not fair to either of us." He didn't respond for a moment. Then he erupted with a string of anger, accusing me of lying, of playing with his feelings, of humiliating him. I listened, tears streaming, feeling a wave of self-hatred. I tried to insert an apology, but he was unstoppable in his fury. "You're a cheat," he spat. "I guess the rumors about you being flaky were right. If you hated me so much, why didn't you just tell me? Did you have to stoop so low?" I had no real defense. "I'm sorry," I managed, voice quivering. "I never meant to hurt you. It was an accident, and I'm telling you because I don't want to lie." He gave a bitter laugh. "Accident." Another pause, then he exhaled harshly. "You know what? Fine, we're done. Don't call me again." He hung up. My heart hammered in the empty silence of that line. I stared at my phone, tears hot on my cheeks. It was done. Maybe it was the right outcome for both of us, but the emotional aftermath felt crushing. People often talk about the pain of being cheated on. I had never heard much about the pain of being the cheater, but here I was, feeling guilt that gnawed at my insides. I deserved any anger he threw at me, but it still hurt. I made my way back to my dorm, my body numb. In the common room, a couple of acquaintances were playing video games. They greeted me, but I was in no state to be sociable. I trudged to my room, locked the door, and collapsed on the bed, hugging my pillow as sobs tore through me. It was a short relationship, but I still felt vile for betraying him, and a swirl of regret haunted me. Why didn't I break up sooner? Chapter 4. The Aftershock. In the days that followed, I tried to keep my head down, focusing on classes and assignments. My phone stayed eerily silent. Aaron unfollowed me on all social media, blocked me on messaging apps, and effectively erased his presence from my life. Any shared group chats we had, he left. In the cafeteria, I caught a glimpse of him once or twice from a distance, but he never looked in my direction. My friends noticed my gloomy state. Marley apologized for leaving me alone that night, not realizing how distressed I was, but I told her it wasn't her fault. She asked what happened, and I confided in her. I cheated. I kissed another guy. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, are you okay? She was gentler than I expected, offering me comfort. I worried she'd judge me, but she said, everyone messes up sometimes. The next day, she brought me coffee and listened while I poured out the conflicting emotions swirling inside me. One persistent emotion was guilt. I couldn't stop replaying the moment I locked lips with Rowan. If I had just stepped away or said no. If I had just ended my relationship with Aaron earlier, I wouldn't have inflicted this heartbreak or carried this shame. Meanwhile, a tiny voice reminded me of the reasons I wanted to break up with him anyway. The weird drunken episodes, the rumor about assault, our sexual incompatibility. But somehow, these facts didn't absolve me of the wrongdoing. If anything, they just made me question why I couldn't have mustered the courage to end things the right way. I tried to channel my energy into introspection. Late at night, I'd journal, writing about how I was confused about whether I was truly a bad person or just someone who messed up. I wrote about how in my entire life I'd never done something that felt so cruel. I jotted down a vow, I will never cheat again. If I'm unhappy, I'll speak up or break it off. I will not repeat this mistake. Writing that eased some of my anxiety, as if I was forging a new moral boundary for myself. Still, the campus atmosphere felt tense. A few of Aaron's acquaintances shot me dirty looks in the hallway. I heard rumors swirling that he was telling people I cheated on him, labeling me as a traitor. My cheeks burned whenever I felt that judgment. I wanted to say, yes, I did cheat, but you don't know the context. But deep down, I knew context might not matter. People would condemn me anyway, and maybe that was my penance. Chapter 5. Doubts and Introspection. One day, about a week after the incident, I found myself seated on a bench in the campus quad, waiting for a class to start. The sun warmed my back, and I tried to read a textbook, but my mind drifted back to the swirl of the last few days. I realized something. I had never truly sorted out how I felt about Aaron beyond the guilt of cheating, because, while I might have done the ultimate betrayal, it didn't erase the reasons I felt uneasy about him in the first place. I recalled how he'd insisted on sexual closeness that caused me physical pain. Did that mean he was ignoring my comfort, or was I just failing to communicate? I remembered how he acted when drunk, how unsettled I was by his reckless behaviors, and the sexual assault allegation, something I never fully resolved in my mind. Did I subconsciously sense a red flag, but tried to bury it? All of it pointed to a bigger truth. I had forced myself to remain in a relationship that felt off. Why? Maybe because I wanted companionship, maybe because my friends encouraged me to give him a chance. But ignoring my gut feelings led me to a point of moral meltdown. Instead of an honest breakup, I stumbled into an act of infidelity. The realization stung like salt in a wound. At that moment, a classmate sat beside me, chatting about an upcoming exam. I forced a polite smile, but my mind remained overshadowed by regret. If anything, the heartbreak taught me that I needed to be more upfront with my feelings in future relationships. If I sense something's wrong, speak up. If I can't see a healthy path forward, leave. Don't cling out of fear or inertia. I sighed, closing my textbook. Maybe this entire fiasco was a harsh lesson that I needed to set boundaries, both physically and emotionally, because the guilt of cheating was overshadowing even the legitimate reasons I had for not wanting to be with him. As a result, I looked like the villain, and in some ways I was. If only I had ended it sooner. Chapter 6. Seeking insight from others. A few evenings later, I hopped online, searching for forums or personal anecdotes about people who cheated. I wanted to see if anyone else had been in my situation. Someone who cheated not because they were a chronic cheater, but because they were too cowardly to break up first. I found threads where people shared similar stories, how they felt tremendous guilt, how they recognized they had to be honest going forward. Some said it was the wake-up call they needed to never cheat again, to always handle relationships with honesty. Others described spiraling shame that took months, sometimes years, to overcome. Reading these accounts, I felt less alone, but also recognized I had a lot of personal growth to do. I posted a brief message explaining my scenario. I cheated for the first time, I regret it deeply, and I ended the relationship right after. How do I move past this guilt? A few replies trickled in, mostly urging therapy or self-reflection, emphasizing that acknowledging the mistake was the first step. Encouraged, I also told Marley about my plan to see a counselor. She wholeheartedly supported the idea, pointing out that it might help me process the reasons for my actions, the heartbreak, and the confusion around the relationship. I made an appointment at the campus counseling center, feeling a flicker of relief that maybe I could talk to someone impartial. Chapter 7. First counseling session, 2 weeks after the kiss. I stepped into a small, cozy office with pastel walls and a worn sofa. The campus counselor, Dr. Patel, greeted me warmly. She was a middle-aged woman with gentle eyes, making me feel somewhat safer about unloading my story. Though I was still nervous. I'd never been in therapy before. We began with the basics: name, year in school, reason for seeking counseling. My voice trembled as I confessed. I cheated on my boyfriend, and I feel terrible. I also want to understand why I couldn't break up with him earlier, even though I felt uneasy for weeks. Dr. Patel nodded, listening attentively. Over the next hour, I recounted the story from the beginning. Meeting Aaron, the short relationship, the sexual discomfort, the rumors, the final straw of that drunken behavior, and how I eventually messed up by kissing another guy. By the end, my cheeks were hot, and I had tears in my eyes. "That's quite a lot to process," she said softly. "It sounds like you felt conflicted about your relationship for some time, yet you didn't feel empowered to end it until after you cheated." I whispered, wiping my eyes. "I hate that about myself. I wish I was stronger or more direct. If I had just ended things when I realized we weren't compatible, I wouldn't have caused all this pain." She offered a sympathetic smile. "Well, the good news is you recognize that. Sometimes mistakes happen because we're afraid of confrontation, or we cling to hope that things will magically improve. Then, in a moment of weakness or confusion, we act out in ways we later regret." I nodded, my chest tight with relief at her understanding. "Does it make me a terrible person?" She hesitated, then gently said, "I don't believe one action defines our entire character. You did something hurtful, yes, but the fact that you're here, seeking help and owning your mistake, suggests growth. The key is learning from it so you don't repeat the pattern." But tears blurred my vision again. I managed a nod, appreciating the nuance in her words. "I want to do better. I never want to be in that position again, harming someone else's trust." She leaned forward. "We can work on identifying your feelings earlier, learning how to address conflict or dissatisfaction before it spirals. Also, we can explore any deeper fears, like fear of being alone or fear of confrontation, that might have kept you in a relationship you knew wasn't right." When the session ended, I left with a mixture of relief and sorrow. Relief, because I had someone guiding me. Sorrow, because I couldn't undo the harm I'd caused, but maybe I could prevent it from happening again. Chapter 8. The encounter on campus. Around that same time frame, roughly 3 weeks post-breakup, I was hurrying from the library to my next class when I saw Aaron in the distance. He was standing by a bulletin board, rummaging in his backpack. My heart lurched, panic welled, but I considered, should I approach him, apologize in person again, or avoid him? I didn't get a chance to decide. He spotted me. Our gazes locked, his expression flickering with anger, then something else I couldn't decipher. Slowly he turned away, resuming his rummaging. That stung, but I couldn't blame him. Perhaps he didn't want a scene. I walked on, head bowed, shame gripping me. Each step felt heavier, as if the campus was a stage where everyone knew my secret. But I forced myself to breathe. He has every right to ignore me. The moment passed, but it left me shaken. That night, alone in my dorm, the memory of his face haunted me. He looked hollow, as if my betrayal had punched a hole in him. My guilt surged, he knew, but I told myself you did the right thing by ending it quickly after the kiss. Dragging it on would have been worse. A small voice argued, you shouldn't have cheated in the first place. And around my mind went. Chapter 9, Talking with Friends. In the weeks that followed, I confided in a few close friends besides Marley, carefully selecting those I trusted not to judge me too harshly. Some offered tough love, others gave me moral support. One friend said, "Look, it's good you told him immediately." Some people hide affairs for months. At least you were honest once it happened. Another friend was more critical. You messed up. You should have ended it before you went clubbing, if you felt that strongly. Their words mirrored the conflict swirling in me. I listened to all these perspectives, trying to glean insight. The overarching theme was clear: breakups can be handled with honesty and dignity, but cheating tears at that dignity. I tried not to dwell on how people in Aaron's circle must be viewing me now. I was probably the villain in their retelling, yet I had to accept that. Marley invited me to another outing. I declined, still feeling raw about clubs. She understood, so we settled for a low-key cafe hangout. Sipping tea, I asked her, "Do you think I should do anything more to fix this? Like apologize again, or try to talk to him?" She pursed her lips. "Well, you already apologized and told him the truth immediately. He might not be ready to forgive you or even talk to you. Forcing it might just aggravate him. Maybe let it go. Let him heal on his own terms." I swallowed, nodding slowly. "Yeah, you're right. Part of me just wants to show him I'm not a monster, but maybe I have to accept he might never see me the same." She reached across, squeezing my hand. "Learn from it, not dwell in it. That's all you can do." Chapter 10, Redefining My Future Relationships. Another session with Dar. Patel delved deeper into what I wanted from relationships in general. We discussed how I'd rushed into labeling Aaron as my boyfriend without truly ensuring we matched in values, communication style, or emotional readiness. She pointed out that my discomfort with his sexual advances was a big red flag. Why did I ignore it? I guess I felt obligated to compromise. I told her, like that's what you do in relationships. But it felt wrong. She nodded. Compromise is part of relationships, but so is respecting your own boundaries. If something felt painful or you weren't ready, a healthier approach would be open discussion or stepping away. Your reluctance might have fueled resentment. Then resentment plus a single impulsive moment led to cheating. You see how these small missed conversations can snowball. I did see, and I realized that in the future, if I ever felt physically or emotionally uncomfortable, I had to speak up or walk away. Bottling it up only led to bigger heartbreak. I promised myself that if I ever dated again, I'd be more attuned to my gut feelings and not wait until a crisis to address them. Dar. Patel also reminded me that therapy is about self-forgiveness as much as owning mistakes. You aren't irredeemable, she said, but you do need to hold yourself accountable and change behaviors. I appreciated her clarity. Maybe I could become the sort of person who navigates relationships with honesty, if only I kept these lessons in mind. Chapter 11, A Surprise Message a month after the breakup. On a chilly Wednesday morning, my phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. I frowned. Opening it, the text read, "Hey, it's Aaron. I got a new phone. Can we talk?" My pulse pounded. Why was he reaching out? Did he want to vent more anger, or was he seeking closure? I stared at the screen for a full 5 minutes before replying yes. We can talk if you want. He suggested meeting in a neutral location. There was a small park near campus. I agreed, though my nerves spiked. That afternoon, I arrived at the park, heart thudding. He was sitting on a bench, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. He looked drawn, a little tired. As I approached, I offered attentive he. He glanced up, expression guarded. He. We fell into an awkward silence. The wind rustled the trees, swirling leaves around our feet. Finally he spoke, his voice hushed. "I've been thinking. I was furious at you, obviously, but I also realized maybe we both messed up. I should have paid more attention to your feelings. Doesn't excuse cheating, but I guess I needed to say that." A swirl of relief and heartbreak mingled in me. I appreciate that. I'm sorry again, truly. I wish I had ended things properly instead of He exhaled. So do I. But I want to ask, did you ever actually want to be with me? Or was it always half-hearted? His question stung. I considered lying to spare him, but I decided to be honest. I thought I did at first. I was intrigued by you. But quickly, I started feeling off. I tried to push those feelings aside. So yeah, I guess it was half-hearted. That's on me. He looked away, jaw clenched. At least you're honest now. We sat in thick silence. I could sense the tension, the sadness. What about you? Did you feel we had a real shot? I ventured. He shrugged, eyes on the ground. I did at the start. But then I sensed you pulling back. I thought maybe I could hold on until you came around. Or maybe you'd just get used to me. That's why I forced some physical stuff, which was a stupid move. I guess I was desperate to feel close to you. My chest tightened with guilt. I'm sorry if I made you feel undesirable or something. It wasn't that. I was just uncomfortable. I should have told you clearly. He nodded, swallowing. Another moment of silence passed. The wind whipped, cold against my cheeks. Finally, he said, "We're done, right? We can't go back." I shook my head slowly. We're done. And it's probably for the best. We're not good for each other. But he gave a short, humorless laugh. Yeah, might be. I guess I wanted closure. Maybe an acknowledgement that we both messed up in different ways. I nodded, tears threatening. I do. I messed up. I'm sorry. And I hope you find someone who truly fits you. And I hope that rumor, the assault allegation, if it's not true, I'm sorry people used it against you. But if there was truth to it, well, that's a separate matter. But he frowned, shoulders tensing. It's complicated, he muttered. Anyway, I wish you luck too. I'm still angry, but maybe I can move on now. We parted with a stiff, brief nod. No hug, no handshake, just an acknowledgement that we had tried to talk like adults. The H in my chest felt heavy, but also a relief. I realized that was the best resolution we could hope for. Chapter 12, retelling my story publicly. With the relationship fully concluded, I decided to share a condensed version of my experience on a relationship forum. Not to seek pity, but to help others who might be in a similar predicament. Uncertain about a short relationship, messing up, wanting to rectify it. I titled the post, "I cheated on my boyfriend. Here's what I learned." I wrote about how ignoring red flags and not speaking up about dissatisfaction led to a bigger betrayal. How I regretted letting my confusion spiral into cheating. I emphasized the importance of open communication and the vow I made never to cheat again. The responses were mixed, some supportive, some harsh. But I felt it was cathartic to lay it out, no longer hiding behind excuses. Interestingly, a few people thanked me for showing that even a single impulsive kiss can have massive consequences. A couple of them asked if Aaron and I might reconcile. I answered truthfully, no, we were never truly compatible, and now the trust is irreparably broken. Another user commented how they admired me for telling him right away rather than concealing it. That small validation soothed some of my guilt. Chapter 30, moving forward, time, as they say, marched on. Classes ramped up, finals approach, and the swirl of everyday life overshadowed the drama of my breakup. I still occasionally felt pangs of remorse, especially when passing certain spots on campus where I used to walk with him, or if a random memory of the drunken night he messed with neighbours popped into my mind. But gradually, the emotional intensity dulled. My therapy sessions continued, helping me reaffirm my new boundaries. I started focusing more on friendships, building a stronger network of people who genuinely made me feel comfortable. I joined a campus volunteer group, tutoring high school kids in math, which added positivity to my routine. On weekends, I favoured simpler outings. Coffee shops, small house parties with close friends. The idea of big clubs gave me flashbacks of that fateful kiss. Maybe one day I'd go again, but only when I felt truly at peace with myself. A sense of resolve guided me. If I ever entered another relationship, I'd do so with caution and clarity. No more half-commitments. No more ignoring my gut, and definitely no lying or cheating. I wouldn't expect perfection from myself or my partner, but I'd demand honesty, because I discovered how deeply one impulsive betrayal can scar both parties. Chapter 14 3, A Chance Encounter with Rowan. About 2 months after the incident, I was at a small off-campus cafe ordering a latte when I heard a voice behind me. "Hey, do I know you from somewhere?" I turned around, and there was Rowan, the guy I'd kissed that fateful night. My stomach clenched. He looked equally stunned to see me. "Hi," I stammered, heat flushing my face. "Where we danced at the club a while ago." His eyebrows rose, then a slow recognition dawned. "Oh." He gave a sheepish smile. "Right. You, left pretty abruptly." I exhaled. "Yes, I was in a relationship at the time, and I realized I messed up. I told him that night, and we broke up. It was a big fiasco." My words stumbled out awkwardly, but I figured honesty was best. He glanced away, lips pressing together in a grimace. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were taken. You never said." "I wouldn't have." I shook my head quickly. "No, it's not on you. I didn't mention it. It was my responsibility. I messed up. I'm sorry for vanishing. I had a meltdown, basically." He rubbed the back of his neck, looking relieved I wasn't blaming him. "I see. Well, I guess it's all in the past now." We stood there, the cafe bustling around us. My mind buzzed with the strangeness of this chance meeting. "How are you?" I asked. "You said you were from a neighbouring college, right?" He nodded. "I'm good. Just finishing my project and came here to meet a friend." "And you? Doing okay now?" I hesitated, then managed a small smile. "Better. Learned some tough lessons, but I'm moving forward." He nodded, returning the smile gently. "I'm glad." Then he glanced at the barista, who was calling his name for the order. "Well, guess I gotta grab my coffee." It was, nice seeing you, wish you well." "You too," I murmured. He left with a wave. And just like that, the door to a painful memory reopened for a moment, then closed again. But I felt calm, not the pang of guilt I expected. Perhaps I was truly healing. Chapter 50, Toward New Horizons. In the end, the whole experience changed me in ways I couldn't have foreseen. The heartbreak, the guilt, the harsh introspection. It all forced me to reevaluate how I approach relationships and honesty. My therapy sessions wrapped up a few weeks before summer, with Dr. Patel congratulating me on my growth. "Remember," she said at our last meeting, "you're not defined by one mistake. You're defined by how you learn and move forward." I took those words to heart. As the summer months beckoned, I found myself dreaming of new possibilities. Maybe a study abroad program or an internship in another city. I craved a fresh environment where I could apply my lessons, meet new people, and practice living with authenticity. I also forgave myself, bit by bit. That didn't mean excusing what I did, but accepting I was human, that I made a hurtful choice, and that I would carry its memory as a reminder of what not to do. Some nights I still felt a twinge of sorrow for how things ended with Aaron. But I prayed he'd find peace, and maybe a partner who suited him better. I had no illusions we'd be friends, but I hoped he no longer hated me. One sunny afternoon, I sat on a campus bench, the same bench where I once realized how restless I was about the relationship. This time, I felt a sense of calm. I was single, yes, but also freer than I'd ever felt. Freed from the guilt by having faced it, freed from confusion by acknowledging we were incompatible, and freed from future mistakes by forging a new path of open communication. I typed a short reflection in my notes app. My vow. If I'm unhappy or uncertain in a relationship, I'll voice it. If I need to leave, I'll do so honestly. No more half-lies, no more excuses. I owe it to myself and to whoever I'm with. I closed my phone, gazing at the blooming flowers around the quad. Life was moving on, carrying me with it. I inhaled the fragrance of spring, felt the warmth of the sun on my skin, and smiled. Because in the aftermath of heartbreak, sometimes the biggest relief is realizing you can choose how your story continues. One with honesty, empathy, and a kinder, more transparent heart.